it's a truth. The truth is I got pregnant. The truth is I lived on the outskirts of town. The truth is I do not have a college education. But those truths do not determine my worth. There's not a decent person on earth who's going to want to date me. No guy anywhere that's ever going to want to be attracted to me because of the situation. And so this is a story that I continuously was telling myself all the way to meet the guy that was eventually going to become my husband. And this was a story that I had created out of my own self, not because of anyone else, but probably as a result of society, what society says about girls that get pregnant at 17 out of wedlock. And I'm sure that's where that story came from. And I let that story be a factor of my life for almost 30 years. And it finally hit me one day that I determined the way that I allowed other people to love me by what I thought about myself. If I thought I was enough, if I thought I was good enough, I could love people to the bitter end, but I didn't allow people to love me because I never felt worthy of it. And that was a hard truth to swallow. When I really realized that I am enough and that the stories that I had created around the stories that I had made in my own head were things that I had come up. They were my own standards. It was the standards I had placed on myself, not that anyone else had particularly placed on me. And another thing, I didn't know who I was. I had lived most of my life remaining very shallow, never looking any deeper than what other people thought of me or the stories that I thought of myself or the value that I put on myself or the things I didn't achieve, the things I failed at. Those are all the things that were very shallow, and that's how I determined my worth and my value and if I was enough. And I'm sure that from time to time you have struggled with, am I enough? I'm not enough. And if you're like most people, probably something that you struggle with a lot. Well, you don't have to. And so what I've discovered is that when I learned who I was, which meant that I really, really dug deep into self-awareness, and I got to know who I was, and I really discovered my values. You see, one of my values was love. And like I said earlier, I would allow me to love, but didn't allow other people to love me. I kept other people at a distance. I didn't want to let you in. I didn't want you to get any closer because I didn't think I was enough and I didn't think I deserved it. And so what that also led me to when I thought that I wasn't enough is that I would try to fit into a mold that I wasn't made for. And so I would go to one group of people and I couldn't fit in there because it didn't align with my values. I'd go to another group and it didn't align with my values and it just didn't work. But when I didn't know that about me, I didn't know those things about me because I was so shallow. So when we take a deeper look into who we are and we discover our values, we listen to the stories that we tell ourselves and we own that story, and we're able to engage all of those factors, it does come down to love and loving who we are and knowing who you are. So some of the stories that I was told that helped determine it was the circumstances, but it became a determining factor for me. And getting pregnant at 17 and the story that I told myself that I wasn't enough because no decent guy was going to want to date me, which wasn't true because I ended up marrying him. He's amazing. And then, even when I was younger, where I grew up was a smaller town on the south end of the county. And so because of where I lived, people always kind of made fun of that. And when I got older and the different groups that I would hang out with, because of where I lived, sometimes, people would question, was I really a good person? Did I come from a good family? And the answer is a yes, I sure did. And I sure was a good person. But I didn't realize until I was older that that had a factor on it too. And I loved my life. I loved my life as a child. I had an amazing childhood. So no, I do not regret the way that I grew up at all. But also, after I found out that I was expecting, the church that I was a member of asked me to withdraw my membership. And so, you know, you're not enough to be a member of our church. And then when I did start dating my husband, there were people who would say things about me having a baby. And, those would always get back to me because I lived in a small town. And then after we got married and we moved to Birmingham because my husband was in dental school and I was working and putting him through dental school and supporting our family. And I had a boss that told me, y'all are never going to make it because you don't have an education and he's going to be a doctor. And so that was another story that I lived with because I didn't have a college education. I always felt like I wasn't enough because everybody else in my husband's family has a college education. Most all my friends have a college education. I did not go to college until later in life. And so I let those things hold me back. We always can tell ourselves a story. And we always can create this story, and our life can be lived completely around that story. Yes, there are circumstances that occur. And in those circumstances, it's a truth. The truth is I got pregnant. The truth is I lived on the outskirts of town. The truth is I do not have a college education. But those truths do not determine my worth. Those do not determine what God says I am and who God says I am and what He has placed me on earth to do. Those are not determining factors for my future. Those are things, yes, I own them. I admit it. Those are truths about me. But that does not determine who I am, and it does not determine my worth. And the stories that you have, they don't determine who you are either. It may be a true story. It may be something that is the truth, but it does not determine your worth. Not at all, unless you allow it to. And for so many years, I allowed those stories to determine my worth until one day it all came crashing down. And I decided I had to know who I was and I had to figure it out. And I wanted to know more than just who I was in the mirror and who I was at the surface. I wanted to know who I was at the core. And when I found that out, and when I determined that, and I got to know who I was, and I got to know my values, and I really met the person I was created to be, it was a game changer for me. And I opened myself up to allow love. And that's what I was created for, was love, to give and to receive love. And our worth, a lot of times, according to us, our standards, not someone else's standards, but standards we place on ourselves, is determined by the stories, like I said, that we tell ourselves. Is determined by the circumstances that has occurred in our lives, the failures. We do not want to ever consider those successes. Y'all, a failure is also a success. Because when one door closes for you, it's not your door. Hold on, because there's another one coming. And there's going to open up another door. And that door is the door you're supposed to walk through. And you'll know your worth. And we have to tell ourselves that we are worthy. We have to tell ourselves that we are enough. Now, I am not enough separate from Jesus. No way, no how. Can't be that. But my husband does not determine my worth. My children do not determine my worth or if I'm enough. What I do does not determine my value, my worth, if I'm enough. Y'all watching and listening to this episode does not determine that. Jesus determines my worth. And I have to accept that. And I have to own that. And I have to live my life in that manner. Knowing that, yes, I am enough because he put me here on earth to serve a purpose, to serve a reason. And I have something to do. And when we know that we're enough and we accept who we are, we're no longer going to be okay with the standards of other people. We're no longer going to compare ourselves to other people. We're no longer going to try to fit in that mold that we weren't made for. We're going to step outside of that and we're going to step into a place that's really uncomfortable, that we're really scared to do, but we're going to walk forward in that because we're confident in who we are, that we're enough even if we fail. Failure's not the worst thing in the world. I failed a million times over, but I get up a million times over and keep trying. I don't have a college education. My husband has a very successful dental practice, and I'm his office manager, and I'm the business manager. And he will tell you that we would not be where we are if it weren't for what I've done to put forth the effort to make our practice successful. And so I never believe that anything we go through in life doesn't have a meaning or a purpose to it. And so even the bad things, again, yes, it is a circumstance and it may be a truth, but it does not determine your worth. I could have allowed being pregnant at 17 to become a statistic, which I said I would not, and I have not. But I could have allowed myself to become that statistic and to become what the world said someone who gets married out of wedlock is. And, especially in a small town in North Georgia. And that's not the truth. That's not who I am. That's not what I am. That does not determine my worth. It does not determine whether I am enough. And your failures and where you've been does not determine whether you are enough or not. But you have to make a choice to decide to get to know who you are, to go deeper than just surface, to own your story. When I say get to know who you are, I mean really get to know who you are. Sit quietly. No one likes to sit quietly, but get quiet. Let your mind get quiet. Yep, you're going to think. And yep, it's hard. It's not fun. But it's necessary to meet yourself. And then engage in every bit of that. And don't miss a single thing. Be fully present in everything that you experience. And open yourself up to allow love. Love yourself. Love who you are. Love who you were created to be out of reverence of who created you. And so I want to leave you with this. All your life you have a choice. And remember the day you decided to know that you are enough.